Hi, everybody. It's Tim Constantine for America with our good friend Dave Bozell. Hi, Dave.
Hey
How are you?
Tim, how are you, man?
Well, we got a little election going on. A little
A
less
little.
than 100 days left now. I don't know if you've noticed.
Just a tiny election. Just it only happens once every 4 years, just like the Olympics.
I made an analogy for somebody. In 1996, Bob Dole, who we all loved, was the candidate for the Republican Party.
Right.
And we did all love him. I was chairman of his effort down in Florida. But
Yeah.
the problem was no one believed Bob Dole. We hoped he could, but nobody really believed Bob Dole was going to beat Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And there was a certain malaise, to steal a word from Jimmy Carter. When Joe Biden was the candidate, that same malaise was hanging over the Democrats. They all hated Trump, but they didn't really feel like they had a strong effort going into the fall. That's all changed now.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has stepped down, and it appears, not official yet, but it appears Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. How does that change the dynamic?
Well, let's go back to Seymour Hersh's piece just for a second. He had a really interesting story suggesting that Barack Obama had called Joe Biden and saying that Kamala Harris was prepared to invoke the 25th Amendment. And the headline within the headline was, "How dare Barack Obama interfere with this process and try to force Joe Biden out." I actually think, if I had to put on my tinfoil hat on for a second, I'm speculating that Kamala Harris was going to play that card herself. That she realized that the Joe Biden campaign was dead on arrival. That she had no chance of winning the 2028 Democratic primary, and so why not take her shot and try to invoke the 25th Amendment and dare the cabinet officials to oppose her, because her political career would have been effectively over. So I actually think that this is how we've ended up here, not because of that Joe Biden woke up one morning and decided to be courageous and patriotic or any of those things. I really do think that his subordinate, his number two, was going to shove him out on her own. Now, that makes her quite formidable on the campaign trail. The reason I say that is this: she has been preparing for this moment for many months. You've really not heard from her. She has not accomplished anything, not only just as vice president, but just her entire career. But this is the moment that she has prepared for her entire life. It's no surprise to me that this rollout has gone off, without much of a hitch. But I really do think, Tim, I think folks are forgetting the fundamentals of these presidential races. Most of the time, presidential races come down to the economy. And quite frankly, this economy kind of stinks. I just saw CNN, to their credit, had their own poll, Tim. They said 86% of all renters in the United States feel that they can never afford to buy a home in this country. That is such an indictment on the system. I can hear the fact checkers saying, but, we're not in a recession technically, but, the stock market is doing okay, but, employment is still relatively low. But this country has gone from working to live to living to work. And that
I call
is
it the gas and eggs test. I went out on election day in 2020 and looked at my local gas station, and it was $1.89.9. And we are, depending on where you are in the country, roughly double that now. And every single American feels that. When you go and buy eggs, they are more than double what they were, and they're just a staple grocery item. You could pick milk, you could pick any number of things. But I say it's the gas and eggs test. Is you can say, oh, the market's doing great. Oh, we're not in a recession. But when I go to the grocery store or the gas station, I feel it. I feel it. You feel it. So what about that 25-year-old cop and teacher who are married with two kids who do not have a big income and are really trying to get by? It's no wonder most people don't think they're ever going to own a home.
No kidding. And I really do think that particularly the Trump campaign has sort of lost sight of that fundamental. I understand that they have to define Kamala, which I agree with. But if there was ever a moment in this country where you would want a businessman to take the reins of the economic future of the country and also but had a record of doing exactly that and doing well. Why hasn't the Trump campaign been a little bit more forceful in doubling down on that record and promising and articulating how they're going to put more money in people's pockets, how they're going to, millennials have come on as a force to be reckoned with. Millennial voters have come on. Now they're parents, okay? You know how I would pick off some millennials? Is to help them purchase a home. And I think you and I would both agree, when we were renting, when we didn't have two nickels to rub together, the one thing that we wanted to do was go buy our own place, right? Yeah. And 86% of the country who rents currently doesn't feel that they can do that now. And 54% of them feel that they will never be able to buy a home. We've got to be able to change that
a little bit, because during the Republican convention, the Republicans were high on life. They were all gathered around with thousands of people that think exactly like they do. One of the Trump court cases, the Florida case, gets kicked out. They're excited. He has survived an assassination attempt. They're excited. They're all together, and he does deliver a good speech on that Thursday night. And everyone I spoke to at the convention, everyone, we're going to mop up in the fall. I don't want to be too overconfident, but we're going to, because Joe Biden was still the candidate. And I thought, they're in a good position 110 days out. They're in a good position. But don't get too cocky, because there's 110 days. I think the same thing now. I'm looking at Kamala Harris, and when you say, why aren't the Republicans doing things, there's 90 some odd days left to get that message out. You've got to give Harris a little bit of space here to have her bump, because she's made the announcement. That's excited the Democrats, who are now on the euphoric high that the Republicans were on 2 weeks ago. Oh my God, we've got a young, vibrant female candidate we can't possibly lose. They're ignoring her track record, but they're excited. The media, the American media, which by and large hates Donald Trump, now has something to be excited about, and they are cheerleading for Kamala Harris. So there's a bump in all those polls, but that's not going to last for 90 days. That's not going to go all the way through. So I try not to get too excited or too down on either side of this thing. And I think we'll see that for the Democrat convention, there'll be all kinds of good coverage of Harris and whomever she chooses as a VP. But then it'll taper off, and we'll have reality for 60 days in September and October.
I think the key for the Trump administration is to knock Kamala off her message. Her message is going to be abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, all those social democratic causes, climate rights, all those types of things. I think the key is to knock her off message. I think one of the ways you do that is to hit her on the economy. Tim, she's never created a single job in her life. In her entire professional career, it's been all about government advancement. She has never created a single job in her life. And I would really hit her hard on that point, and hang the Democrat and Joe Biden's economic record around her, because she was definitely a part of it, and definitely tries to praise it. But there's nothing to praise. And I think that's something that she can't really articulate anyway.
It wasn't all that long ago that the media played, I won't say a perfectly fair role, but a more balanced role in presidential elections. They would give you information about each candidate, and you would choose. They might favor, and the big publications would write an editorial favoring one, but each individual story wasn't a cheerleading piece. Nowadays, it is. We live in a different world where the New York Times, the Washington Post, they are clearly advocating for a particular candidate. How much of a role will the media cheerleading play in the outcome, in the ultimate outcome? Not what you want, but what will actually happen in November.
I think it's going to have a huge impact, so long as, if the country believes what the press is telling them, or cannot find good alternative sources of information. This just happened just the last couple of days. Facebook tried to censor the assassination attempt photo of President Trump, basically trying to memory hole that event's existence. If they, just like they did with Hunter Biden's laptop, Media Research Center did a study post-election, did a survey. 1 in 6 voters would have changed their vote. 1 in 6 Biden voters would have changed their vote had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop. And so, yes, I think the media is going to run all the way through the tape, attacking Donald Trump, praising Kamala Harris. And so Trump, I think, this is why, one of the reasons why I'm glad he won the primary, because there's probably no other Republican who on his feet could thread that needle and attack the media as necessary. Most of the other Republican candidates would say, "Mother, may I please give me fair coverage." I mean, you mentioned it wasn't so long ago when they were fair and balanced during presidentials. I remember in the 2016 primary, they wanted Trump to win, right? I mean, MSNBC had him on the air every morning. I mean, they loved him. So they've just decided that he's the enemy of democracy and all of those terrible, terrible things. And I think it is imperative that this country finally decide that they are going to push the media aside for once and for all and seek out other alternative sources of information.
Right. Final question, and that is, again, I know when you talk factually, but the average American doesn't dig in deep the way you do or I do because we do this for a living. So when they see Kamala Harris and they see a relatively young, vibrant woman, especially if you're a woman in America, we're going to take a closer look at this. She just did a couple of appearances this week where she filled arenas, small arenas. There were thousands of people there excited to see Kamala Harris. Joe Biden literally never did that. Not this year, not in 2020. He couldn't draw 60 people. So does the personality, does her, vim and vigor, does that play a role here? And can that carry her for 90 days? I don't think it would carry her if she had to go through a primary process and months of vetting and so on. But in this tiny little window, can that carry her through?
Yeah, she benefits from having the convention during the window because everyone's going to be celebrating her. Remember, during the primary, she had this big launch event. I think it was in Central Park, or maybe it was a park in Chicago, but I think it was Central Park in New York. Thousands of people showed up. And she was, the bright young star on the scene, running for president. And she dropped out before there was a vote cast. Having looked at the polls 4 weeks before Iowa and South Carolina, and her poll numbers were 0.0.
But she lasted more than 90 days.
That is the crazy thing.
Tiny little window.
Right. There is this window that she can, and this is why I think my theory, just a theory, why she was just going to pull the trigger on the 25th Amendment card. Because she sees this never before, never again opportunity to win the White House. So why not try it?
For America, sorry, David. He is David Bozell. I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. Please come back soon. There's always more to talk about. David, have a good week, my friend.
See you soon.